They thought a 76-year-old grandmother would just roll over and take whatever scraps they threw her way. They had no idea that this sweet old lady had spent 40 years working in estate planning and knew exactly how to make people who mistreat their elders pay the price. What happened next will shock you. My name is Rosalind, and I'm about to tell you how my own daughter and grandson tried to manipulate me out of my life savings, then systematically made my life miserable when I refused to be their financial doormat. But here's what they didn't count on. I didn't just walk away. I made sure they understood the true cost of treating family like garbage. Let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand just how calculated their cruelty really was. At 76, I thought I had found my safe harbor. After my husband, Derek, passed 3 years ago, my daughter Elise insisted I move in with her and my 22-year-old grandson, Jordan. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone," she said, wrapping her arms around me at Derek's funeral. "Come live with us, we're family." The words felt like a warm blanket after the coldest winter of my life. For the first year, things seemed genuinely caring. Elise would check on me in the mornings, Jordan would help me with my medications, and we'd have family dinners on Sundays. I contributed my Social Security and Derek's pension to the household expenses. Of course, I wasn't expecting a free ride. I paid for groceries, utilities, my portion of everything. I even helped with the mortgage when Elise had that rough patch at work. Family helps family, right? But looking back now, I can see the signs I chose to ignore. The way conversations would stop when I entered a room. How Jordan's friends would look right through me like I was furniture. The gradual shift from Grandma Rosalind to just being called her when they thought I couldn't hear. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday in October. I was in the kitchen making my morning tea when Jordan slouched in, still wearing yesterday's clothes, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Elise followed right behind him, and I could tell from her expression that this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. "Mom, we need to talk to you about something important." Jordan shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. This boy I'd rocked to sleep, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose report cards I celebrated, he couldn't even look at his own grandmother. "Jordan needs a car," Elise continued, settling into the chair across from me with that smile that never quite reached her eyes anymore. "His broke down last week, and he can't get to work or school without reliable transportation." I nodded sympathetically. "That's tough, sweetheart. Have you looked into used cars? Sometimes you can find good deals if you're patient." Elisa's smile tightened. "Well, that's just it. He found the perfect car, a 2019 Honda Civic, barely used, great condition. But because of his credit situation," she gestured vaguely at Jordan, who was now studying his phone like it held the secrets of the universe. "His credit situation?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I knew where this was heading. "He's young, Mom. He doesn't have established credit yet. The bank says he needs a cosigner for the loan." And there it was, the real reason for this family meeting. They want someone with good credit and stable income to guarantee the loan. And you know, with your pension and Derek's benefits, plus your excellent credit history from all those years of managing your finances so well, I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't a request. This was a setup, carefully orchestrated to make me feel like the unreasonable one if I said no. "How much are we talking about?" I asked quietly. Jordan finally looked up. "It's $18,000, but Grandma, I swear I'll make every payment. I'm working at the warehouse, and I'm getting more hours next month. You won't have to pay anything." $18,000? My husband Derek and I had spent 30 years carefully building our savings, penny by penny. We'd gone without vacations, driven used cars, clipped coupons, all so we could have security in our old age. And now they wanted me to risk it all on a 22-year-old with no credit history and a part-time job? "Sweetheart," I said gently, "that's a lot of money to guarantee. What happens if something goes wrong with your job? Or if you get sick? Or if the car gets totaled in an accident?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Nothing's going to go wrong," Jordan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Elise leaned forward. "Mom, this is your grandson we're talking about. Don't you want to help him get ahead in life?" And there it was, the guilt trip, gift wrapped in family obligation. I'd been an estate planning paralegal for 40 years before I retired. I'd seen hundreds of families torn apart by financial decisions just like this one. I'd watched elderly parents lose their homes, their savings, their dignity, because they co-signed loans for adult children who couldn't make the payments. I'd drafted wills for people who died bitter and broke because they couldn't say no to family members who saw them as walking ATMs. "I love Jordan," I said carefully, "but co-signing a loan means I'm legally responsible if he can't pay. At my age, on a fixed income, I can't take that risk." The silence that followed was deafening. Jordan's face flushed. "So that's it? You won't even consider it?" "It's not about not considering it. I have considered it, and the answer is no. There are other ways to handle this. You could save up for a less expensive car, or look into other financing options, or—" "Other financing options?" Elise interrupted, her voice sharp. "Mom, we've tried everything. The bank specifically said they need someone like you to co-sign." "Then maybe that's the bank's way of saying the loan is too risky," I replied. The look that passed between Elise and Jordan in that moment told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about helping Jordan. This was about accessing my money, my credit, my financial stability. And when I wouldn't play along, I became the problem. Elise stood up abruptly. "Well then," she said, her voice ice cold, "then don't expect to stay here for long." The words hit me like a physical blow. In that one sentence, my daughter had just threatened to make me homeless because I wouldn't risk my financial security for a car loan.
Jordan looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. My own grandson, who I'd helped raise, who I'd supported through his parents' divorce, who I'd bought school supplies for when money was tight. He just sat there and let his mother threaten to throw me out on the street. "Elise," I said quietly, "surely you don't mean that." "I mean exactly what I said. We took you in out of the goodness of our hearts, and this is how you repay us? By refusing to help your own family when we need you most?" That night, I lay in bed replaying the conversation over and over. But it wasn't the words that kept me awake. It was what happened when I reached for the bedside lamp to read Derek's old letters like I did every night. Nothing. I flicked the switch again. Still nothing. I got up and tried the main bedroom light. Dead. The outlets? Nothing worked. I made my way to the hallway using my phone's flashlight. The hallway lights worked just fine. The bathroom lights worked. The kitchen lights worked. Just my bedroom had been systematically disconnected from power. Standing there in the dark, I understood with perfect clarity that this wasn't an electrical problem. This was a message. The next morning, I said nothing about the lights. I made my tea, read my book in the living room, and acted like everything was normal. But I was watching, paying attention to every detail. Elise was coldly polite. "Good morning, Mom. Sleep well?" "Just fine, dear," I replied pleasantly. But over the next few days, the psychological warfare intensified. My bedroom stayed dark. When I asked Jordan about it, he shrugged and said he'd look into it, but never did. The hot water in my bathroom started running out faster. I'd be halfway through a shower when it turned ice cold. My favorite coffee mug, the one Derek had given me for our 40th anniversary, mysteriously disappeared from the kitchen. Food I'd buy for myself would vanish from the refrigerator. When I'd ask about it, I'd get blank stares and suggestions that maybe I'd forgotten I'd eaten it. The Wi-Fi password suddenly changed, and when I asked for the new one, Elise would say she'll tell me later, then forget. They stopped including me in dinner plans. I'd come to the kitchen at our usual family dinner time to find dirty dishes in the sink and leftovers put away without anyone thinking to save me a plate. The most insidious part was how they made me question my own sanity. When I'd mention these things, they'd act concerned about my memory, my confusion, my age. "Are you feeling okay, Mom? You seem a little scattered lately." But I wasn't scattered. I was being systematically pushed out of my own living situation by people who were supposed to love me. The final straw came 2 weeks later. I woke up one morning to use the bathroom and discovered they'd removed the toilet paper from my bathroom. Not used it up, removed it entirely. The holder was empty, and there wasn't a spare roll anywhere in the room. I had to walk to the main bathroom in my nightgown to find toilet paper, only to run into Jordan's girlfriend leaving his room. She looked at me with barely concealed disgust, like I was some embarrassing relative who'd overstayed my welcome, which I realized is exactly how they all saw me now. That morning, while Elise was at work and Jordan was sleeping off another late night, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my old friend Margaret, who worked at a real estate office. "Maggie," I said, "I need to look at apartments." "Apartments, Rosalind? I thought you were living with Elise." "I am, but I think it's time for a change." There was a pause. Margaret had known me for 30 years. She could read between the lines. "What kind of place are you thinking about?" "Something small, quiet, and completely mine." That afternoon, while my daughter and grandson thought I was taking my usual nap, I was touring a modest one-bedroom apartment on Lingwood Avenue. It was small, yes, but it had something my current living situation lacked: dignity. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, was a woman about my age who'd raised 4 children and understood the value of peace and quiet. The rent was reasonable, the neighborhood was safe, and most importantly, it would be mine. She asked, "When would you like to move in?" "As soon as possible." That evening, I sat down with my laptop, the one Derek had insisted I learn to use because you never know when you might need it, and began making plans. First, I researched tenant rights for elderly residents. What I discovered made my blood boil. In our state, there are specific laws protecting elderly tenants from harassment and retaliatory eviction. The systematic disconnection of utilities to my room, the removal of basic necessities like toilet paper, the deliberate exclusion from household activities, all of it constituted elder abuse under state law. But more importantly, I discovered something that would become the cornerstone of my revenge. Elise had been claiming me as a dependent on her taxes. For the past 2 years, while I'd been paying my share of household expenses, she'd been getting a significant tax break by claiming me as a dependent adult child. The same woman who was now making my life miserable to force me out had been profiting financially from my presence in her home. But here's the beautiful part. To legally claim someone as a dependent, that person has to live with you for more than half the year, and you have to provide more than half of their financial support. Elise wasn't providing more than half of my support. I was paying for my own food, my own medications, my own portion of utilities, plus contributing to the mortgage. She was actually benefiting financially from having me there, not sacrificing for my care like she pretended. This meant she had been committing tax fraud. The next morning, I started implementing my plan.
First, I went to the bank and opened a new checking account at a different institution. I arranged for my Social Security and Derek's pension to be deposited there instead of the joint account I'd been contributing to at Elise's bank. Then I visited a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but someone who specialized in elder law and family financial abuse. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, after I'd told him my story, "what your daughter is doing isn't just morally wrong, it's illegal. We call it financial exploitation of the elderly, and it's a felony in this state." He explained that systematically making my living conditions unbearable to coerce me into financial decisions like co-signing the loan constituted elder abuse under both state and federal law. But I wasn't interested in sending my daughter to jail. I had something else in mind. The next week, while Elise was at work, I quietly began packing my most precious belongings: Derek's letters, our photo albums, my mother's jewelry, the quilt my grandmother had made, my favorite books, everything that held real meaning for me. I didn't pack everything at once, just a few things each day, carefully chosen and quietly stored in boxes in my closet. To anyone looking, it would just seem like I was organizing. The apartment on Lindwood Avenue would be ready in 10 days. During this time, I maintained the pretense of everything being normal. I was pleasant at breakfast, asked about their days, and acted like the sweet, confused old lady they apparently thought I was. But I was also documenting everything. Every time they forgot to include me in dinner. Every day my bedroom lights didn't work. Every passive-aggressive comment about my memory problems or confusion. I wrote it all down, with dates and times. I also started paying very close attention to their financial situation. Jordan, it turned out, wasn't just working part-time at a warehouse. He was also running up credit card debt, had unpaid traffic tickets, and owed money to several friends. The perfect car he wanted wasn't transportation, it was a status symbol he couldn't afford. Elise's finances weren't much better. She'd been using credit cards to maintain a lifestyle beyond her means, and having me contribute to the household expenses was the only thing keeping her afloat. They didn't need me to co-sign Jordan's car loan out of love. They needed my good credit because their own financial irresponsibility had made them untrustworthy to lenders. The revelation was both heartbreaking and liberating.
3 days before I was scheduled to move out, Elise made one final attempt to get me to co-sign the loan. "Mom," she said, sitting down next to me on the couch with a stack of papers, "I've been thinking about our conversation, and I realize maybe we came across as pushy. But Jordan really needs this car, and you're the only one who can help him." I looked at the loan documents she'd placed in front of me. $18,000 at 7.9% interest over 5 years, monthly payments of $365, total amount to be repaid $21,900. "I noticed you brought a pen," I said mildly. "Well, yes. If you're ready to sign, we could take care of this right now." I picked up the pen and held it for a moment, watching hope bloom in her eyes. Then I set it down. "No," I said simply. Her face flushed. "Mom, we've been over this. Jordan needs to learn that actions have consequences, and so do you." "What's that supposed to mean?" I stood up and walked to my room, returning with a small box I'd been keeping in my closet. "It means, dear daughter, that tomorrow I'm moving out." The color drained from her face. "Moving out? Mom, you can't be serious. Where would you go?" I found a lovely apartment on Lindwood Avenue, 1 bedroom, very quiet, and completely mine. Jordan appeared from his room, apparently having heard the conversation. "Grandma, you can't just leave. This is your home." "No, sweetheart, this was never my home. A home is a place where you're wanted, where you're treated with respect, where people don't disconnect your electricity to punish you for making financial decisions they don't like." Her mouth fell open. "Your electricity isn't disconnected. Don't be ridiculous." "Really?" I walked to my bedroom and flicked the light switch. Nothing. "How long has it been now? 2 weeks? 3? "That's just an electrical problem. We've been meaning to call someone." "Have you? Because the rest of the house seems to work just fine." The silence stretched between us. "And Jordan, I need to give you something." I pulled out a thick folder from the box. "What's this?" he asked. "It's a printout of car listings from Auto Trader. Reliable used cars under $8,000. Cars you could actually afford with your part-time warehouse job. Cars that don't require co-signers or putting your grandmother's financial security at risk." His face reddened. "Those are junk cars." "No, sweetheart, those are cars within your means. The Honda Civic you want isn't transportation. It's a luxury you can't afford." Elise stood up abruptly. "Mom, this is insane. You can't just move out. You're 76 years old." "Exactly. I'm 76 years old, and I refuse to spend whatever years I have left being manipulated, ignored, and treated like an inconvenience in my own living space." "Your own living space? This is my house." "Yes, it is. And tomorrow it will be completely yours. No more elderly mother taking up space, using electricity, or refusing to co-sign loans for cars she can't afford." I paused and pulled out another folder. "Oh, and Elise, you'll want to call your accountant." "My accountant? Why?"
Because you're going to need to file amended tax returns for the past 2 years. Her face went white. "What are you talking about?"
You've been claiming me as a dependent, haven't you? Getting that nice tax deduction for supporting your elderly mother?" She said nothing, but her expression was answer enough. "The thing is, dear, to claim someone as a dependent, you have to provide more than half of their support. But I've been paying my own way. My own food, my own medications, my portion of utilities, plus contributing to your mortgage when you were short. You haven't been supporting me. I've been subsidizing you." I pulled out a thick stack of bank statements, receipts, and canceled checks. I've documented every payment I've made toward household expenses for the past 2 years. Turns out, I've been paying about 60% of my own living costs, which means those dependency deductions you claimed were fraudulent. Elise sank back into her chair. "Now, I'm not interested in getting you in trouble with the IRS," I continued pleasantly, "but you'll want to file those amended returns voluntarily, pay back the money you owe, and make sure you don't claim me as a dependent next year, because I won't be living here. And I definitely won't be providing you with the financial documentation you'd need to support such a claim." Jordan looked confused. "What does this mean?" "It means, sweetheart, that your mother is going to owe the IRS about $3,000 in back taxes, plus penalties and interest, money that definitely won't be available for co-signing car loans." The next morning, moving day arrived. I'd arranged for a small moving company to help with my furniture. Not much, just my bedroom set, my favorite chair, and a few other personal items. Everything else could stay. What struck me most was the silence. No one offered to help. No one asked if I needed anything. Elise left for work early, avoiding the whole scene. Jordan stayed in his room with his headphones on. As I watched the movers load my belongings into their truck, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Excitement. The apartment on Linwood Avenue was small, but perfect. Hardwood floors that gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, a kitchen window that looked out onto a garden. Most importantly, every light switch worked, every outlet had power, and every room belonged completely to me. Mrs. Chen had left a small welcome basket with tea, cookies, and a note that said, "Welcome home." Home. When was the last time any place had truly felt like home? That first night in my own space, I made a cup of tea in my own kitchen, sat in my own chair, and read Derek's letters by my own bedside lamp that turned on when I wanted it to. I cried that night, but not from sadness, from relief. The call started 3 days later. "Mom, this is silly. Come back home. We can work everything out." "This is my home now, Elise." "That tiny apartment? Mom, you belong here with family." "Family doesn't manipulate each other. Family doesn't make each other's living conditions miserable to get their way. Family doesn't commit tax fraud using their elderly parents." She hung up. But over the next few weeks, a funny thing happened. Without the constant stress of walking on eggshells, of never knowing what small cruelty would come next, I started to rediscover who Rosalind Morrison actually was. I planted herbs in small pots on my windowsill. I joined a book club at the local library. I started taking walks in the neighborhood park and discovered there was a group of women who met every morning for Tai Chi. I also did something that would prove to be very important. I made friends with my neighbors. Mrs. Patterson next door was a retired nurse who'd worked in geriatrics for 30 years. When I told her my story, she was outraged. "Honey," she said, "what they did to you wasn't just wrong, it was textbook elder abuse. Have you considered reporting it?" "I'm not interested in getting them in legal trouble," I said. "I just want to live my life in peace." "I understand that, but there are other ways to make sure they understand the consequences of their actions. It was Mrs. Patterson who told me about the state's Elder Financial Protection Program, and it was her suggestion that led to the most satisfying part of my revenge. You see, in our state, there's a little-known law that allows elderly victims of family financial abuse to file a civil claim for damages. Not criminal charges, civil restitution. And the damages aren't just financial. They include compensation for emotional distress, loss of enjoyment of life, and something called dignity damages, money awarded specifically for the psychological harm caused by being treated as less than human. With Mrs. Patterson's help, I documented everything: the systematic harassment, the financial manipulation, the fraudulent tax claims, the attempt to coerce me into a financially dangerous decision. I didn't file the claim right away. I waited. 6 weeks after I'd moved out, Elise called again. "Mom, I think we need to talk. Can you come over for dinner Sunday?" "I don't think that's a good idea, dear." "Please, Jordan wants to apologize." Something in her voice made me curious. I agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a restaurant downtown. Sunday arrived, and I walked into the restaurant to find both Elise and Jordan waiting in a booth, looking uncomfortable. Jordan stood up when he saw me. "Grandma, I wanted to say I'm sorry." "Sorry for what, sweetheart?" He looked at his mother, then back at me. "For how we treated you. For the lights and everything. It was wrong." "What made you realize it was wrong?" Elise shifted in her seat. "Mom, we've had some time to think, and we realize we may have been unfair."
Look, maybe we were pushy about the loan, and maybe some things happened around the house that weren't ideal, but we're family. We should be able to work things out. I studied their faces. Elise looked stressed, tired. Jordan looked genuinely remorseful, but also nervous about something. "How are things going with the car situation?" I asked. Jordan's face fell. I didn't get the Honda." "Oh." "The dealer said without a co-signer, they couldn't approve the loan. So I bought a used Toyota, 2012. It's not as nice, but it runs good." "How did you manage that?" "I used my savings for the down payment and got a smaller loan for the rest." Elise jumped in. "Which is why we're hoping, if you wanted to come back home, Jordan could really use some help with his car payments, just temporarily, until he gets more hours at work." And there it was. They weren't sorry for how they'd treated me. They were sorry they'd lost access to my income. "How much are the payments?" I asked. "Only $280 a month," Jordan said hopefully. I nodded thoughtfully. "That's much more reasonable than $365. Their faces brightened. "But I'm not moving back, and I'm not helping with car payments." The hope died in their eyes. "However," I continued, "I do have something for both of you." I reached into my purse and pulled out 2 envelopes. "Jordan, this is for you." He opened it to find a check for $500. "What's this for?" "It's a gift to help with your car expenses. Not a loan, not an obligation. A gift, because despite everything that happened, I love you." His eyes filled with tears. "Grandma, But," I continued, "this comes with conditions. You use this money responsibly, you don't ask me for any more financial help, and you treat your future family members, girlfriends, wives, children, elderly parents, with the respect and kindness you should have shown me." He nodded vigorously. "And, Elise, this envelope is for you."
She opened it and found not a check, but a set of legal documents. What is this? It's a civil claim for elder financial abuse, emotional distress, and dignity damages. I've documented every incident of harassment, every attempt at financial coercion, and every day you made my living conditions deliberately unbearable. Her face went pale. Mom, you can't be serious. I'm very serious. The total claim is for $15,000 plus legal fees. $15,000? We don't have that kind of money. I know, which is why I'm offering you a choice. I lean forward. You can fight this in court, where all the details of how you treated an elderly mother will become public record. Your neighbors, your coworkers, your friends will all learn exactly how you systematically abused someone who trusted you. Or what? Or you can sign the agreement on page 3, which waives the financial damages in exchange for a written apology, a promise never to claim me as a dependent on your taxes again, and your agreement to attend family counseling to address why you thought it was acceptable to treat me the way you did. She stared at the papers. Family counseling? 6 months, minimum. Because Jordan deserves to learn how healthy families actually treat each other, and you need to understand why what you did was so deeply wrong. Jordan looked back and forth between us. What happens if Mom doesn't sign? Then I filed the claim in court, and a judge decides what your mother owes me for 2 years of financial fraud and elder abuse. The silence stretched for several minutes. Finally, Elise spoke. The counseling, would you consider joining us? Not to move back, but to work things out. It was the first time since this whole thing started that she'd shown any real vulnerability. If the counselor thinks it would be helpful, and if you're genuinely committed to understanding why your behavior was unacceptable, then yes, I'd consider it. She signed the agreement. That was 6 months ago. We've been to family counseling together 8 times now. It's been difficult, emotional, and sometimes painful, but Jordan has learned to recognize the patterns of financial manipulation and emotional abuse. He's apologized not just with words, but by consistently treating me with respect and kindness. Elise has been slower to change, but she's beginning to understand that her financial stress doesn't justify taking advantage of people who love her. And me? I'm thriving in my little apartment on Linwood Avenue. I joined the Tai Chi group, and we've become close friends. I volunteer at the library twice a week, helping other seniors learn to use computers. I've started dating a lovely widower named Frank, who lives 3 blocks away and makes me laugh every day. Most importantly, I've reclaimed my sense of self-worth. But the story doesn't end there, because there's one more piece of revenge that's still unfolding. Remember how I mentioned updating my will? For years, I'd planned to leave everything to Elise and Jordan equally. My savings, Derek's life insurance money, my half of the house Derek and I had owned before he passed, everything was going to them.
But after what happened, I realized that leaving them a large inheritance wouldn't teach them anything about respect, responsibility, or the value of treating family well. So, I made some changes. 50% of my estate now goes to a scholarship fund for students studying elder law and geriatric social work, people who dedicate their careers to protecting vulnerable older adults. 30% goes to the local domestic violence shelter, specifically their program for elderly victims of family abuse.
Jordan will receive 10% when he turns 30, but only if he completes a degree program and demonstrates 5 consecutive years of financial responsibility. No major debts, no defaulted loans, no asking family members to co-sign for things he can't afford. And Elise, she gets the remaining 10%, but only after she completes 2 years of family counseling and writes a public essay about elder financial abuse that gets published in our local newspaper. They don't know about these changes yet. They still think they're going to inherit everything someday. But here's the beautiful part. If they continue to treat me with genuine respect and kindness, if they show real growth and change, I might reconsider. The will isn't set in stone. But if they revert to their old patterns of manipulation and financial exploitation, they'll discover that actions really do have consequences. Some people might think I'm being too harsh, that families should forgive and forget. But I spent too many years in estate planning, watching families destroyed by financial abuse and manipulation. I've seen too many elderly parents die broke and broken because they couldn't set boundaries with adult children who saw them as walking ATMs. What Elise and Jordan did to me wasn't just hurtful, it was dangerous. If I hadn't had Derek's pension and good credit, if I hadn't had the knowledge and resources to recognize what was happening, I could have ended up homeless, bankrupt, or trapped in an abusive situation with no way out. And if my story can help even one person recognize the signs of elder financial abuse, if it can give even one grandmother the courage to stand up for herself and demand better treatment, then everything I went through was worth it. Because here's what I learned. It's never too late to start over. It's never too late to demand respect. And it's never too late to teach people that treating family members like disposable resources has real, lasting consequences. I'm 76 years old, living in a small apartment with herbs on my windowsill and a man who brings me flowers every Friday. I have friends who value my opinions, activities that bring me joy, and the deep satisfaction of knowing that I chose dignity over convenience. My daughter thought she could manipulate me because I was old, because I was family, because I had nowhere else to go. She was wrong on all counts. And now, every month when I don't contribute to her mortgage payment, every tax season when she can't claim me as a dependent, and every time she has to explain to her counselor why she thought elder abuse was acceptable, she's reminded of the cost of treating family like garbage. Some people call it revenge. I call it natural consequences. And you know what? I sleep better at night in my own bed with my own working lights, surrounded by my own things than I have in years. If you're watching this and you're dealing with family members who are trying to manipulate you financially, who are making your living situation miserable to get their way, who are treating you like you owe them something just because you're related, please know that you have options. You have rights. You have value. And you deserve to be treated with respect, regardless of your age or your living situation. Don't let anyone convince you that you have to accept abuse because they're family. Family doesn't abuse each other. Family doesn't manipulate each other. And family definitely doesn't try to coerce elderly relatives into risky financial decisions by making their lives miserable. You are never too old to stand up for yourself. You are never too late to start over. And you are never too weak to demand better. I'm proof of that. And if my story can help just one person find the courage to choose dignity over dysfunction, then sharing it was absolutely worth it. Trust me, the view from the other side of standing up for yourself is absolutely beautiful.